The groove thickness on traditional rail and stile router bits can't be adjusted. As a result, you get doors that rattle. You can adjust Freud's premier adjustable rail and stile router bits from 3/8 of an inch all the way down to 7/32, which is perfect for creating snug-fitting plywood panel doors that don't rattle. Start by unplugging the router and placing at least 80% of the shank into the collet, then tighten the collet. To reduce the groove thickness on the shim cutter, remove the shims between the two split cutters. Use a standard 1/2-inch wrench to remove the nut on the top of the stile bit and carefully remove and set aside the nut, spacer, bearing, and top cutter. Now remove the extra shims until you have the desired groove thickness. Replace the top cutter and bearing, then add the extra shims for safekeeping before replacing the spacer and securely attaching the nut. To adjust the stub tenon thickness, unplug the router and place at least 80% of the rail bit shank in the router collet, then tighten the collet nut. Use the provided hex wrench to remove the screw at the top of the bit. Then carefully remove the top cutter. Remove the same number of shims and replace the top cutter. Make sure you tighten the top screw down. You can now create rattle-free stub tenon and extended tenon flat panel doors in the exact same steps as creating raised panel doors. By adding the optional double-sided profile cutters, you can make double profile doors up to 1.25 inches thick. The resulting doors will be as attractive on the inside as they are on the outside. The double profile is ideal for high-end woodworking projects such as media centers, libraries, and fine furniture. The best part is that you don't have to purchase a whole new set. All you have to do is reconfigure your basic rail and stile bits. The optional double profile cutter set includes matching back profile cutters for both the rail and stile router bits. To reconfigure the rail bit for double profiles, unplug the router and place at least 80% of the shank into the router bit collet, then tighten the router bit collet. Lock the spindle on the router and use the spanner wrench to remove the top half of the bit. Screw the back profile assembly into the bit and tighten it with the included closed end wrench. The steps for creating stub tenon doors with double profiles are exactly the same as creating regular stub tenon doors. However, in this case, when you set the height of the rail, you'll need to position the stub tenon so that it's perfectly in alignment with the center of the material. I've set the height of my bit, and I've also aligned my fence with the bearing on the router bit. I've locked everything down. I've also got my hearing protection and my safety glasses on. At this point, I'm ready to route the end of my rail. Creating an extended length tenon for double profiles is easy. First, I've unplugged my router, and now I'll simply remove the top portion of my rail bit by locking the spindle on my router and using this included wrench. I'll create my extended tenon in multiple passes as I gradually move my fence back. As you move your fence back, remember to route both faces of your rail. Now I've got my fence locked down and my router bit is locked into position. my safety glasses are on, and I'm wearing my hearing protection, and I'm ready to go. I've unplugged the router and replaced the rail bit with the Stile bit. I've placed at least 80% of the shank into the router bit collet, and I've tightened the router bit collet. I'll use the spindle lock on the router to hold the bit, and then I'll use a standard 1/2-inch wrench to remove the nut at the top of the bit. I'll remove the spacer, bearing, and all the washers above the top groove cutter. And then I'll place this Stile back profile cutter on the spindle, and then add back the bearing and washers, and replace and tighten the nut. I'll put the spacer in a safe place for future use. Your Freud adjustable rail and stile system is now ready to create thick double profile frames. We'll need to adjust the height of the Stile bit. To do this, align the extended tenon with the groove cutter. For added cutter performance and safety when cutting double profiles, make at least 2 passes as you cut the grooves on the rails and stiles. I will now align my fence up for my first pass. Now that I've finished all my cuts, it's time to check the quality of the fit. And it's just that easy to make elegant double-sided profile doors.